Welcome, everyone, to your Tuesday Dynasty Heat Seekers live show. I'm your host, Bryce Frazier, and I'm joined by the always reliable Anthony Leone. Leone, how was your weekend? How are you doing?
I had a pretty good weekend. We were just talking about the Raider-Jag game that was on Thursday, and you were talking about the roughing the passer call, which I didn't get a chance to see most of that game. Once I found out the Jaguars were resting everyone, I thought, I'm not going to watch all these, not even second stringers at this point. I mean, we're talking third stringers on some of these guys, but I guess you watched some of the game and you were talking about that roughing the passer call, so that's kind of funny. Hopefully the league isn't too soft this year, but looking forward to the show tonight, and hope you're doing well. You doing all right over there, Bryce?
Yeah, I watched only about 3 drives of that game, because I work pretty early, so I don't get to stay up for that stuff. And I really only kind of watched it to look at one player who we'll talk about later. But it's just exciting to know that this past Sunday will be the last Sunday without football for the rest of the year, and then obviously last week marks the first week. We won't ever have another week without football until next year. Yeah. So it's just exciting to know that things are going to be ramping up. We're going to have a lot more stuff to talk about because, in this part of the season, it's dull, right? I mean, there's not much we can talk about because there's not a lot happening. Training camps just started, but even then, there's not much news and notes, which typically is a good thing because if you ever get news and notes during the training camp, it's usually injuries, right? And we've been fortunate enough so far to not have anything like fantasy-wise be too, big of an impact other than the one thing that we're going to talk about, which is Deshaun Watson for the 90th time. So obviously, Rick was right on it last week. I wasn't real educated on the situation of how the NFL is going to handle it. I didn't read enough into it, but they did appeal the suspension. I was under the impression that suspension was handed out, like it was recommended and the NFL handed it out. So I was kind of educated on that later. So Roger Goodell came out and basically said that what he did was horrible, and they need a full year is the suspension that the NFL is going to look for, and I don't blame them. So, but with that being said, again, I'm not extremely educated on this whole process, but with the NFL now appealing that suspension and searching for a new one, I've heard that opens the door for Deshaun Watson potentially playing week 1 now and potentially the rest of the year if this thing gets dragged out because he's going to countersue and things like that. I'm not a lawyer or educated on this process, but from some Browns fans that obviously look into this way deeper than I do, Deshaun Watson could be playing week 1 against.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Carolina. Well, that means the pro process would have to be expedited, correct?
Well, the reason why I don't think that's going to happen is because it's in Deshaun Watson's best financial interest to take the suspension this year because he's only getting paid $1 million this season. If he drags it out and plays this year, it doesn't help him at all financially. And so I don't think it makes any sense why he would want to do that. So I think if the NFL hands anything a year or less, I think he'll take it. I don't think it makes sense for him to do that.
So I heard that, that makes sense what you just said. But then I heard something about again. This is just what I'm hearing. I'm not.
Go ahead.
I heard that once it gets dragged out a certain amount of time, then it becomes like the allegations have now been too long to where that he can't be punished for it. I'm not sure.
I don't know. I don't think so.
That might only work in the real judicial system. So I don't know. I don't know. I just tell you what I hear. I think it would just be best for him to get the full year. I heard that the NFL originally wanted about an 8-game suspension with a hefty fine, and he denied that.
So, I think that's where we're going to land. I think they're gonna average out the 6-game and the full season. I think they're gonna settle on like a 12-game suspension. That's my opinion. That's my gut on it. Mm-hmm. For fantasy purposes, he's basically done in a redraft setting. In a dynasty setting, I don't think his value really should change at this point.
Probably goes down a little bit, just a little.
Maybe, I don't know.
Right?
I mean,
would you be drafting him, like, say he wasn't suspended, would you be drafting him above like guys like Dak Prescott?
maybe right after. But I mean, he's really high.
Right.
I mean, it's
He
really
probably is
high
down a couple
anyway.
spots, maybe, yeah.
Maybe a little bit, but I mean, he's there. He's going to play, if not this season, next season, almost certainty. So, you know, but we did talk, you remember last week, maybe there's new allegations and stuff. I don't know, but I think it's pretty certain he's going to miss a majority of this year and probably will play next season. I think that's the best kind of way to feel it out right now.
Yeah. So we'll just have to keep playing that. I feel like in Dynasty, which is what we talk about on this show, it doesn't really change much because I feel like as a Dynasty owner, you kind of prepared for the worst at this point. So anything less than a full year is a win in the sense of your fantasy team.
Yeah.
So, right.
And maybe he would fight a year-long suspension. I mean, I don't think so, but maybe he would. I don't know. Well, yeah, I guess we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see. So if you guys tuned in last week, we talked about some deep stashes at the wide receiver position, which is, you know, kind of a fun topic because those are your guys that, you know, you're just throwing darts at. So if you miss, who cares? But if you hit, you hit huge. A lot of times, if any of these guys at the area that we're targeting here in drafts, whether it's auction or just like a, you know, round by round kind of situation, if you hit a guy that can just even be a flex option in your lineup, you've hit pretty big in these situations. So we're moving on to running backs this week. We won't be continuing on after this because quarterbacks and tight ends it's few and far in between at that point. We'll be recapping preseason week 1 the next week. So let's get into these running back stashes. And Leone, why don't you go ahead and start with your first guy?
Sure. My first guy is Trey Sermon. I hope I don't sound too much like a homer here, but RB 74, and you know that means there's 73 other running backs on average taken ahead of him, and I just think that's just a little bit too many. On the new depth chart that was released today, Sermon is listed 3rd behind Mitchell and Wilson. Each Wilson and Mitchell have injury concerns throughout, you know, their young careers. And rookie Tyronn Davis-Pierce, who is RB 56, is listed 4th after Sermon. So you're getting almost 20 spots of running back value. And yeah, I mean, I would prefer TDP, Tyronn Davis-Price. I mean, I would prefer him. But at the cost difference from RB 56 to RB 74, I really like the value here. Again, he's listed ahead of him on the depth chart. And, you know, he didn't really play much in his first season. I think he's going to have an opportunity now, especially if Wilson or Mitchell get hurt, which is almost a guarantee at this point, given their track record. And so I just think Trey Sermon at RB 74 is a really good value. I also think Jeff Wilson, too, kind of a little bonus here. I think his ADP of RB 94 is also great. Of them all, I think Sermon is kind of like that sweet spot for upside and value. But I also have a bunch of benches with Wilson stashed on there too. So I think both guys are pretty good ads if you can get them on the very cheap, which it looks like you can. Bryce, what do you think?
As a guy who invested, you know, a lot of second-round picks last year in rookie drafts for Trey Sermon, I sure hope you're right. You know, and the Niners are like a team where it seems like any one of those 4 running backs could be the starter by the end of the year, and it wouldn't really surprise you. It's Eli Mitchell's job to lose right now, but like you said, all 3 really, Sermon, Mitchell, and Wilson, were having injury issues last year. All 4 of the running backs last year, right? Raheem Mostert got hurt week 1, and then Eli Mitchell. I'm not even sure who took over for that game, but then Eli Mitchell became the back, got hurt a little bit. Sermon got some opportunity, and he didn't look bad in that opportunity. I was looking at his stats while you were talking about him, and he had 1 game against Seattle where he had 19 carries for 89 yards. That's all right on the ground, nothing too good, but I don't know. It's kind of a running back room I'm steering clear of, including Eli Mitchell at this point, just because of all the uncertainty with it. But, you know, at this point in the draft, being a dart throw. It doesn't hurt to roster a young guy like that. I thought he looked good at Ohio State. He looked decisive and patient, but I heard that those are some things that he was struggling with early in his career in the pros. So hopefully he can turn it around, and it seems like that he potentially could get the opportunity to see the field more often again this upcoming year, and maybe make light of the situation he's in. So I agree. I like Trey Sermon for that price. It's hard to hate anybody at these prices anyway, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So I'll jump into my first guy. This guy last year was a guy that you plugged in your lineup, especially if you did a redraft league more likely. A waiver wire ad, Dearness Johnson. And I love the value at running back 72 this year. So the reason I love this value is because obviously he's young. And the amount of time in the time that he got to showcase his skills last year, he did a phenomenal job. Like, he looked like he could be a running back a starting running back in the NFL. The problem is he's got two dudes that are really, really good in front of him, right? Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. Kareem Hunt requested a trade. That's not going to happen. The Browns pretty much said no. And it's obvious why, right? He's in a contract year. He wants to go showcase his skills as a bell cow back so he can get paid the following year. Not going to happen, obviously, with Nick Chubb there. He's going to be splitting carries, splitting time with as long as they're both healthy. But next year, Kareem Hunt's probably going to be gone. Nick Chubb is only getting older, and he gets used a lot, so he's got a lot of miles on those tires. Dearness Johnson could see himself on the field playing somewhat of a Kareem Hunt role next year, and then potentially the following year finding himself as a starting running back, whether it's still with Cleveland or with another organization. So if I'm drafting guys this late, running back 6, 7, that potentially that I can just, especially if I have a deep roster, I can just have him sit on the taxi squad for this year, maybe put him on my bench next year, and then he finds himself into a starting role the year after, 2024 or 2025. I think that's a huge hit for a guy at this value. So what are your thoughts on Dearness Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to eventually turn into a starting back, but I think the value and being able to potentially flex him in the right spot. I mean, Nick Chubb's really durable. I don't think Nick Chubb's going to be gone. I think they're building.
He lost some time last year with injury.
Yeah, but they're building this team to compete, win now. They're going to keep Chubb. It looks like Hunt will be gone next season. I think Dearness Johnson is a good call. I think he can be flexed if Chubb or Hunt are unavailable. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if we'll ever see him as a starting running back.
I actually misspoke. Dearness Johnson's been in the league for a little bit. I was thinking of another guy I have on my list, so he's not going to sit on your taxi squad. He is 26, which was a little bit older than I thought. I was under the impression it was more like 24, 25. But, still, if he can carve out a role and have
I think he can carve out a role. I just don't see him being a starting running back. But, when you're drafting at this ADP, what is Dearness Johnson? 72, the 72th running back. So that means 71 other running backs are taken ahead of him. I mean, you're not really hoping for a starting running back. You're just kind of hoping for at least someone who can flex. And I think he certainly has that upside, especially if the opportunity presents himself. So, I think it's a good call. And I think he's going to be on a really good offense, especially next season. It's really a next season play with Dearness Johnson. Right. Hunt and Chubb are there this season.
He's there.
Watson's probably not going to be around this season. But next season, if Dearness Johnson's there, if Chubb is there, with Watson back, it could be a really good offense, and I think that's a kind of a sneaky play a year out. So I like the call.
Yeah. All right, Lynn, jump into your second guy.
All right, my next guy, Myles Gaskin, running back 75. Now in Miami, Gaskin's not the lead dog anymore. They brought in Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Sony Michel, and it's going to be this huge running back by committee. So in these situations, I like to just kind of get the cheapest guy. And we've talked about that before, and I'm going to talk about it again now. Gaskin is by far the cheapest, not by far, but he is the cheapest guy at RB75. Mm-hmm. I think Michelle might be next above him, maybe, and then Mostert and then Edmonds. But Mike McDaniel, the new head coach, former offensive coordinator for the Niners. I mean, we've seen, like you said, you're going to steer clear of the Niners backfield just because of how they use and rotate all their guys. Well, now they're going to employ that sort of system here in Miami. So you might as well get the cheapest guy of the committee, in my opinion. And also, Gaskin is the youngest guy out of Edmonds, Mostert, and Michelle. You know, Gaskin's only 25 years old. So he's the cheapest, he's the youngest, and he may not be with the team next year. A lot of these guys are on one-year deals. So, you know, who knows what this will look like a year from now. But Gaskin could be in a much favorable position next year. Maybe he has a really good year here with Tua and Hill and all these weapons they have in Miami. I think that there's still a lot of value left in his tank, being only 25 years old. And so I think at RB75, it's just incredible value for a younger guy who has some upside and may even outproduce a lot of these guys on this Miami offense, from the running backs, that is. Bryce?
Yeah.
Did I sell you on it? Was my pitch good?
I mean, I do like Myles Gaskin. I thought just he's in a horrible situation, right? Like Miami just couldn't, you know, they didn't have to really worry about the receiving core last year with pretty much just only Jalen Waddle consistently healthy out there. And even he missed a couple of weeks last season. So yeah, I like Myles Gaskins for his value. I just don't, I think the path for him to see the field is going to be rough. Like we were talking about before, like the charts came out and I was just looking at theirs when you brought him up, and he's listed as the fourth, right? With Chase Edmonds obviously being number one. And who I think will take over if he's healthy is Raheem Mostert, because I just think he's the more polished runner, whereas Edmonds will be more of a third down back is what I envision happening there. So, you know, and then when Sonny Michel gets his times, it's like he's always pretty decent too. Like he was pretty decent when he was with the Rams last year, where, you know, Darrell Henderson was kind of underwhelming. Like he started off kind of pretty decent. He started being a little bit underwhelming, got a little injured, and then Sonny Michel started to slowly take over. So it's just like I don't see any of these backs really doing well enough to separate themselves from the pack to where I don't have much confidence that Myles Gaskins sees the field. But when we're talking about guys at this value, Raheem Mostert's significantly more expensive, and Chase Edmonds is significantly more expensive. So I'm not sure where Sonny Michel was listed on this ADP. That would be something we really quickly try and find. But 64. If he's only maybe like 5 to 10 spots above,
10. He's about 10 spots. 64.
I would almost argue that I would almost like him just a little bit more at that value, because I think the path for him seeing the field is going to be.
I think that's true for this season, but given his age, it's like, man, I don't know.
How old is Sonny though? Is Sonny that old?
Sonny Michel
in the league? What?
He's
3 years?
He's at least 27.
27?
He's at least 27. Yeah, he's 27.
Is he 27?
Yeah, he's 27.
Okay. Well, how old's Myles Gaskin? 24?
25.
25? 25. Okay. Well,
I mean, 2 years.
Yeah, but I think by then the Dolphins will have a long-term solution at running back.
Yeah, you know, the other argument against Gaskin is, you know, it's a new head coaching regime here, and Gaskin was like the guy they had. And if they really had faith in Gaskin, would they have brought in Chase Edmonds, Sonny Michel, and Raheem Mostert? You know, that's the argument against him. But even if he has a down year in 22, I think he has enough years left where he can be valuable down the line. Yeah. So that's why I still prefer him at his ADP.
But I can agree with that. You know, it's funny because when Kareem Hunt asked for the trade and quickly was denied, people were, you know, what team would be the great landing spot for him? And the first team I always thought of was Miami. I'm like, that'd be the perfect spot, like for Kareem. They have plenty of backup running backs, but he would immediately walk on as the number one. And all these guys we wouldn't even be talking about at this point. So, all right, I'll jump into my number 2 guy. So running back 65, Hassan Haskins, rookie running back, so he can fit on your taxi squad if your league has those. Backup running back for the Tennessee Titans. So obviously, not going to see the field not going to see the field very often as long as Derrick Henry is healthy. But the reason I put him on here, obviously he's rookie and he's a young guy, but and more often than not, he's being drafted probably like in the 3rd, 4th round of a lot of these rookie drafts.
Yeah.
We saw last year that Dontrell Hilliard and Deontay Foreman were successful when Derrick Henry was rehabbing his injury, right? So if you get, and those guys are mediocre backs at best, I would say they're much more below average. So if Hassan Haskins is even somewhat decent, that team kind of focuses their offense around the run game, a lot of the play action and things like that. They've got a pretty good offensive line. He can have tremendous value for running back 62. Is that what I said? Running back 62. 65. So why not take a guy that's, being drafted as the 6th running back, in most leagues, especially if you're doing a startup with all these rookies already implemented. He has a decent path to be on the field, even just as a guy to spell Derrick Henry. And then if something that happened to Derrick Henry again, like Rick has done a great job of doing articles of running backs that have seen the volume like Derrick Henry has seen in Christian McCaffrey, and the fall off is huge, and the risk of injury is significantly higher the following seasons. And we've now, and literally that research that he's done has been proven with Christian McCaffrey, with like guys in the past like Adrian Peterson, Derrick Henry, things like that. Says Hassan Haskins being drafted as like a number 6 running back can be a guy that you could find in your flex position even this year if injury were to happen. Obviously, you shouldn't draft based on that situation, but this guy's the number 2 running back on his team probably already, coming from a team that also ran the ball a lot with Michigan. You probably didn't know he went to Michigan, did you, Leone?
No.
He doesn't know any
college.
So yeah, I like that. If I'm seeing guys this low that are a team's number 2 running back, I'll go ahead and take them, store them on my taxi squad until they get their time to make their way into my lineup. What are your thoughts on Hassan?
Michigan's the Harbaugh team, right?
That is correct.
Kareem Harbaugh? Yes. Okay, I know that. All right.
I'm actually going to look at the Tennessee Titans depth chart and see if he is listed as number 2. White.
Yeah, go to the official Titans website. I guess my concern is without AJ Brown there, how effective is the running game going to be? Now, Derrick Henry may be able to keep them honest. I think back to when Adrian Peterson was running against, stacked boxes and was still able to be semi-productive. So I think Henry may be able to do that, but I don't know if Haskins is going to be able to do that.
They have 3 running backs listed as their number 2. Dontrell Hilliard, Jordan Wilkins, and Hassan Haskins.
Yeah. So I mean, I think at the value, it's fine. I wouldn't really be looking too much for this season, but maybe down the line, maybe Henry gets hurt again. Maybe there'll be a little bit of value there. I don't know. I'm a little bit iffy on it, but again, at the value, I mean, out of all the guys we talked about, though, I mean, I'd take him over. I take him over Gaskin, and I would take him. I would take him over Dearness Johnson.
Probably, me too. I mean, yeah, he's a rookie.
Yeah, I think I'd rather have Trey Sermon. I think that's the one exception. I think I'd rather go with the upside of Trey Sermon myself, but it's pretty close. But he's right there.
You said how the run game will do without AJ Brown, but AJ Brown's not on the field consistently anyway, right? I think that's not going to be much of an issue for me, like when I'm looking at guys like this. But we'll see. I just think with Derrick Henry being 28, Hassan Haskins, if he looks pretty decent, the team, you don't really build a team around a running back, so they could if they're looking to rebuild, right? Because Ryan Tannehill's getting older, they might move on to Malik Willis within a year or two. They got Treylon Burks. Robert Woods isn't going to be very good for a couple of years. They might be looking to rebuild, and running back is not really an area a lot of teams focus on when they're rebuilding. It's all, it's offensive line, wide receivers, quarterbacks, things like that. When it comes to the offensive side of the ball, I think running backs are typically an afterthought unless you're getting like a generational talent in the draft that you're able to get. So that's kind of what my thoughts are.
I'm good with it. I'm good with it. I'm hip. I like it.
Okay. All right. Go talk about your next guy.
All right. My next guy, the Benny Snell. I'm digging deep here. RB 91. 91. Almost fell off the spreadsheet. Now, obviously, Benny Snell won't get much work if Najee Harris stays healthy. Najee got over 300 carries alone his rookie season. That's not even counting any of his monster receiving numbers. I think he had like 70-something receptions as well on top of that. But, Pittsburgh is one of the few remaining bell cow teams where they have historically had one running back get the majority of the work. We saw it last year with Najee. We've seen it with Le'Veon Bell. We've seen it before that. So I think if something were to happen to Najee Harris, knock on wood, I don't want to, hope for that necessarily. But then Benny Snell would be in line for potentially a huge amount of volume. And he's really the only backup running back on their team. It's not like one of these other like murky running back situations where you're not really sure who would be the backup. They don't have like 3 guys listed at number 2 or anything like that. So I think Snell would be, I think he's, I don't really like handcuffing guys, but he's one of those like really late last round selection guys you could take if you wanted to handcuff Najee. Or even if you don't have Harris and you just want to take like a flyer on, a random kind of running back after all these other guys are gone. I think 91 for Snell with the potential of having a pretty much full workload on a regular basis if Najee got hurt, I think it's pretty good. I think RB 91 is just too low for Benny Snell. Bryce, what do you think about Snell here?
Yeah, that's really low for a number 2. I agree. I was looking for Anthony McFarland, and he's not even on the list. I know he's a potential cut candidate for the 53-man roster. He might not even make it, but I was just reading about him, and it says that he's not going away without a fight. But yeah. That means that he's
Anthony's, man. Anthony's, man.
That means he's close to going away. So yeah, Benny Snell is a guy that I would definitely look to, quote unquote handcuff. But I don't have to have Najee Harris to draft him. And like I just alluded to, and you just mentioned, Najee got a lot of touches his first year, and it's really hard for running backs to, he's young, so he could probably do it for a couple more years. But it's just your risk of injury or anything like that, missing time just goes up significantly when you're seeing that type of workload. So the opportunity for Benny Snell to see the field as a starter is not really like that. It's not out of the realm of possibility for maybe some of these other guys on the list, like Myles Gaskins or something like that, where if the starter goes down, there's no certainty that he still sees touches. Right. So at the moment with the running back depth chart, if the starter went down for the Steelers, I would assume that Benny Snell would be the guy right now. So I agree 100%. I did go down that far, but I really didn't. I didn't even think about Benny Snell. I for some reason still had Anthony McFarland stuck in my head as a guy that the Steelers look to as a backup. So I agree completely on that. With that being said, I'll go into my most exciting guy to talk about. And we've talked about this guy so many times this offseason. And I alluded to it earlier when I said the only reason I watched the Hall of Fame game was to watch this guy play. And I really didn't even get to see him play. It's Zamir White. Because I went to bed pretty much right as he started to take over. Zamir White is listed as running back 62. Now, these rankings were created before the Hall of Fame game. I would expect him to go up probably 10-ish spots after the Hall of Fame game because he looked pretty good. I think he had 11 touches for 60-something yards and a couple of receptions for some yards. I think he had like 3 catches for 40-something yards.
Yeah, we've been talking about him all offseason.
Yeah, he's pretty.
Both of us have been very high on him all season.
Yeah, pretty efficient guy, and I think we both can agree that we see him as the starting. We think it's a very, very high possibility that he's the starting running back for them next year. And I'll be honest. Mr. Scamper says the great Amir Abdullah. Oh wait, never mind. Yeah. The Zamir White really came on my radar right after the draft when I was watching some draft recap stuff with some of the analysts, and Maurice Jones-Drew, the Jacksonville Jaguars running, one of their great running backs, said that Zamir White reminded him of Adrian Peterson, the way he just had vision, cuts, and explosiveness through the hole. And when you have a guy like Maurice Jones-Drew who has been in the league and played at that level, talk about another guy that playing at that similar level. That's something I listen to, right? I listen to the experts, especially if they played the position and been in the league. So, and Zamir White wasn't a high draft pick because injury did plague his college career. He also had James Cook playing with him at Georgia. You probably didn't know that, Leone. But James Cook and him were both kind of on the field a lot together. So neither one of them got to shine, I think, to their full potential as being like a number one guy. We saw very similar situation with Sony Michel and Nick Chubb, who also played at Georgia.
I knew that one. I knew that
you did know that? Okay.
I knew that one, yeah.
But again, and Nick Chubb had injuries in college to where he wasn't being drafted as high as a lot of people thought he should be. So could Zamir White be the next Nick Chubb? I think that's honestly a possibility in the sense of like a steal. So I know what you're going to say about Zamir White. So go ahead and.
Well, what do you think I'm going to say about Zamir White?
Huh?
What do you think I'm going to say about Zamir White?
I mean, I know you agree. That's the only problem. Like,
I 100% agree. Yeah, everything you said was perfect. I have nothing bad to say about him. He was one of my favorite guys all offseason, all of our drafts. I remember you were drafting, and I was like, "Yeah, I really like White," and you made a point to go get him. I've been telling everyone all offseason he's one of my favorite. I don't know if I should say sleeper, but past the first round type guy.
He was originally being taken right after the draft. He's starting to be taken in like the early fourth. And now he's being drafted closer to like the early third. And a lot of
I would say after this game, I'd say he's firmly a second round selection now. I would say firmly.
I think so too.
Yeah.
So I got him for a late third.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a great pick, great value. I love the pick here. I do think his value is probably lower on this list than in reality after the Hall of Fame game. This ranking is from August 3rd. Like you said, he's probably up 10 spots.
I would say
he's probably right up there with Khalil Herbert.
Yep.
Maybe even a little bit higher. So I think that's a great pick.
And one more thing to note was he wasn't like practicing right away in training camp. Like he had about a week or maybe a week or two of practice before they put him in that Hall of Fame game. I think just a week. And there were reports saying he wasn't going to play, but he must be picking up the offense pretty quickly to do that. So that was another encouraging sign because I wasn't expecting to see him play after reading some reports like that. So go ahead and jump into your final guy.
Yeah, I saved my favorite for last. I don't think you did, but I saved my favorite for last. Keyshawn Vaughn. Get this, running back 88. 88, just a few spots higher than Benny Snell. He's in his third year now. He hasn't really had much opportunity in his former years in the league. I think, I think he's due for a relatively big season. Obviously he's still behind Leonard Fournette, but he is listed second on the depth chart. And there's really not a lot of other guys there. Yeah, they drafted White, and I think they have Giovanni Bernard still, but he's on the depth chart, second in line to Lenny. I think he's going to have more opportunity this season. I think he's learning the offense, gaining Brady's trust, and really he's one injury away with Fournette to really having a really large role too. And this is obviously one of the best offenses in the league, led by the GOAT, Tom Brady. So I think running back 88 is just phenomenal value. It's impossible to pass up. I have him stashed left and right. Anytime someone has dropped him in my leagues, I've added him. I just think he is getting dropped. I think he's a great stash. And at this current time, out of all the guys we talked about, he's my favorite stash, given his age, the upside he still has, and his current price of RB88. I just think it is automatic. Bryce, what do you think about Keyshawn Vaughn?
Yeah, I think at 88, it's hard to go wrong with a guy like that. Obviously, Leonard Fournette, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be on the field. And then the only concern I have is that the Buccaneers did draft Rashad White. I can't remember. I don't know how to pronounce it. Rashid White.
Rashid, right?
All right. Yeah. Third time's a charm. Rashid White. So, I know the depth charts are listed as Vaughn is the number 2 right now. But, wouldn't surprise me to see him drop on that depth chart. He did get some opportunities to showcase his skills last year. He had a really good game, I think, against I was looking it up early. I believe Carolina, where he broke off a big run, kind of got people excited, especially if they invested in Keyshawn Vaughn. But the problem is, as long as Brady's there, I think it's going to be a lot of Giovanni Bernard and a lot of Leonard Fournette on the field. Gio as that pass catching back, Leonard Fournette as that just bell cow, also a good pass catching back as well. But again, if it's a guy that I could store on my roster and hope that maybe Rashid White isn't anything, fizzles out, he's way more expensive than Keyshawn Vaughn, right? I mean, he's probably in the top 50, I would assume. So you're dropping down almost 40 spots for this guy who could find himself in a decent role, maybe just next year. Like, this Buccaneers team could look so different just with any year from now, right? Like, Mike Evans is getting older. He could somewhat like be dropping off soon. Tom Brady might retire next year. Who knows? Leonard Fournette might be pretty much done after this year. The Buccaneers are going to be going from like first to worst probably relatively soon, whether it's next year or the year after. And again, like I alluded to earlier, when you're rebuilding, you don't focus on running back. You focus on everything but. So Keyshawn Vaughn could be that guy in the situation where they focus on everything. They're not very good, and he's pretty decent out of the backfield. He gets a lot of PP. He could be a PPR guy for a year or two. So that's what you're hoping for at this point, especially when you're fine with that, especially if you're drafting him at 88. So I don't mind Keyshawn Vaughn at 88, especially if he's listed as number 2 on the
and I want to add his rookie season on this pod stream. I was 100% off Keyshawn Vaughn. In fact, the co-host at the time had him ranked 5 or 6 overall rookie.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was the year with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and
Jonathan
Swift,
Taylor.
right? It was that year, I think, and they had him right. Rick too. He had him 6, like right after all these dudes. Or I don't know if Rick had him that high, but he had him in the first round, and I was completely off Keyshawn Vaughn. I said, this guy, my quote was, oh, he said he didn't. That's good. I stand corrected. I'm positive Rob Silvers did. He was on the show. But yeah. But respect to Rob, by the way. I like Rob. Nothing against Rob. But I said, look, this guy's fool's gold. He's not going to be as good as you guys all think he's going to be. He doesn't have the skill set. You guys are putting him up here with these other guys just based on situation, and it's not how it works. Now, I don't think he's going to be the next Nick Chubb or JT, but at RB88, even if he's half of Nick Chubb, if he's as good as JT's left nut, at RB88, you're going to get some value here. So
Rick said that was all before Lenny. But I remember watching then. You were off of him before then. Because Lenny joined the team a week before the season started. So you guys were definitely talking about Keyshawn Vaughn before Lenny. Lenny Fournette. So
my point
I remember you guys arguing. You guys were always arguing in the Discord about Keyshawn Vaughn.
But my point with Keyshawn Vaughn is, look, he's not going to be the next JT. It's never going to happen. He was drafted too high, just like Trey Sermon was drafted too high. But just because they haven't done so well this far, when you can get them at such a good value now, don't be the ones to write them off because they burned you in the past. Capitalize on the value now, because other people are obviously looking the other way, and this is where you can easily gain some value. And all it takes is a couple of good weeks, and then you can instantly flip them for a second or third round pick, depending on what happens. So
take another stab.
Yeah.
He said, that's my point. It's easy to clap back when all analysis was before Lenny was unexpectedly cut a week before the season. Yeah, but it's still, I mean, why would they sign Lenny Fournette if they thought Keyshawn Vaughn was going to be any good? That's kind of a counter to that, right? Like if they're like, well, we don't need Leonard Fournette because Keyshawn Vaughn is going to be pretty dang good. I don't know. I did not pay attention to Keyshawn Vaughn as a guy I steered clear of. I really only liked two running backs in that entire draft class, and it happened to be Jonathan Taylor and DeAndre Swift. I didn't like DeAndre Swift nearly enough to get him as much as I should have. But I told people that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is being ranked way too high. Like at 1-1, I'm not taking him. I would rather trade back and take Jonathan Taylor for sure. And
I had CEH 101. So
yeah. I liked.
So I was wrong on that one.
but I always tell people when it comes to running back, you draft just any position, really. In all reality, is I'm going to draft talent over situation, because situation is just so volatile in the NFL. Like where talent always eventually just takes over, right? And we saw that. And I watch Ohio State. I watched a lot of the Big Ten, so I got to see Jonathan Taylor. So, I watched it. You need to watch college football, Leone. It'll make your offseason takes much better. So,
I just watched the tape afterwards.
Yeah. It's fun to do on Saturday.
What's that?
This is something we all can agree on. Rojo is garbage. I hate Rojo. All right, I'll talk about my last guy. This guy found his way into my starting lineup a lot last year. Deontay Foreman, running back, 61. He is now the backup for the Carolina Panthers. And Rick, I was talking about your articles that you have written. I don't know if you were in here, but I was talking about some articles that you wrote where you spoke about running backs and their production after they see the amount of volume and touches that guys like Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey had, and how their risk of injury goes up significantly. And literally last season proved your articles completely right, because Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey saw injuries, missed a lot of time, pretty much the whole season, like at least fantasy season. And now Deontay Foreman is Christian McCaffrey's backup. And we saw last year that Deontay Foreman was pretty successful in the Titans offense. And I think it's Chuba Hubbard. I always kept calling him Chuba last year because I think that's more fun to say. But Chuba Hubbard was the backup for Carolina last year in the absence of Christian McCaffrey. And he was not very good. Like, he just wasn't. Where I think Deontay Foreman could come in and be significantly better than Chuba Hubbard was. And I think that Deontay Foreman wasn't even bad in the pass game when given the opportunity. Obviously, the Titans last year, if you didn't watch, used Dontrell Hilliard a lot in the pass game. But Deontay Foreman had a fair share of PPR points out of the backfield, and he saw some success doing that as well. So I'll take Deontay Foreman as running back 61. I don't think it's a one shot at this point with how Christian McCaffrey's career has been going these past 2 years to see him on the field as a starter for maybe a couple of weeks. So I like him at that value. What are your thoughts on Deontay Foreman?
Can you see my screen right here?
I cannot, no.
Can I share my screen or no? It won't work.
I don't know. I might have to.
Might have to allow it.
I don't know.
All right. It's okay. Oh, wait. I know how to do it. Wait.
Share screen button down there, Leone.
Yeah. I can do it myself. I don't need help. Hold on.
It seems like you need help.
I do. Share. It won't let me. Window. Chrome tab. It's not. Oh, here we go. Did it work?
Yeah, here I can add it to the stream. There you go.
Did it work? Can we see this?
Yeah.
Look at this guy, Deontay Foreman. Look at this guy.
This is what you wanted to do?
Dude. Yeah. Look how nice this guy looks. Like the happiest looking NFL player I've ever seen in my life.
That was extremely unnecessary.
All right.
But he does look nice. He looked like, the funny thing last year, like, did you see when he was on the field? Like, he looked like Derrick Henry. Like, he's not that much smaller. And he had the dreads sticking out the back of the helmet like he does.
No, honestly, I think everything you said's good. In the Scott Fish Bowl, I drafted Christian McCaffrey, and someone took Chuba Hubbard before Deontay Foreman, and I wasn't really going to handcuff, but I thought, well, I guess I will now. It was like the 20-something round, so I just took him like it was one of my last picks. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's the handcuff. I think he is Christian McCaffrey is probably going to get hurt. Let's just be honest here. And Foreman is going to be the one. Foreman's going to be the one to really, I think, take over. I agree. I mean, Chuba Hubbard wasn't that bad. You've made him sound like he was really. I mean, he wasn't that bad. He just wasn't that great. He just wasn't great. Like, he didn't ever make you go, wow. And so I think Deontay Foreman is the guy in line.
He sucks a lot.
Nah, he was okay.
He wasn't. He wasn't okay. He was not good at all. At all. I think that. I mean, I was just looking at the Panthers.
I want to look at his stats.
Panthers lineup, and Chuba and Deontay Foreman are listed as running back 2 right now. I think it'd be a situation where we see them maybe try, like if McCaffrey were to get hurt again, like we would see them try and put Chuba in. And he just underwhelms again, where they're just putting Deontay Foreman, who's just a big bodied guy that might just at least be able to get 3 or 4 yards in between the tackle much easier than a guy like Chuba would. Where I still see it being like a split backfield if that were to happen. But I just think that eventually Chuba would take over. Again, you don't draft based on the what you think injury will happen. But, I mean, it's been 2 years in a row now that Christian McCaffrey has gotten injuries that have taken him out for most of the season. So it's something hard to ignore now when once is like okay, whatever, but twice now we're starting to form a pattern. So, and that amount of volume that he got.
Chuba stats are a lot worse than I thought they'd be.
They're horrible, aren't they? What's his average yards per carry?
Like 3.5 or 3.6. But he only had one fumble. Fumble.
Wow! Congratulations.
You gotta look at the bright side.
That would matter in New England, where they care about ball security. Like, if you fumble, you might get
you're cut.
Roster, right?
Yeah.
Jonas Gray had a 4-touchdown game against Indianapolis. Was late the next week to one practice, and he never saw the field again.
Yeah.
Again. I was at that game that he scored 4 touchdowns. Yeah. So
is his rookie card in your PC?
No. I don't even think they made cards of him. I don't even know. I haven't been PCing very much lately. All right. Well,
cool.
That's it for our deep stashes. So again, next week, guys, we'll be listening. I'm sorry. We'll be talking more of a recap of the.
Yeah, we have real football next week. We have real football to talk about.
Probably won't get a glimpse of a lot of starters. We might see a couple here and there. But we'll get to talk about some of these rookie guys. There's definitely quite a few that I'm looking forward to seeing week 1. Obviously, especially wide receivers. I'm excited to see all these basically the top 10 wide receivers top 12 wide receivers drafted in this class are guys that I'm all going to be paying attention to. All the way,
and all these guys we talked about. I mean, all these running backs we talked about are probably going to see the field week 1.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I'm gonna be excited to talk about all the way from Drake London to Velus. So I can't remember his last name. Is it Jones? I can't remember. Velus Jones, the Bears wide receiver. Yeah, Rick would know. But I'm excited to look at all these guys. Even Romeo Doubs I've been scounging training camp reports of a lot of these teams, reading about players, and it seems like I'm not even typing in these wide receivers' names. I'm just typing in the team and then reading the full kind of scouting report of offensive players. And a lot of these rookie wide receivers are being talked about. Some good, some bad, mostly good though. So I'm definitely excited. So we don't have any questions. So we're just gonna end it right here, 10 minutes early. So thank you guys so much for listening.
Thanks everyone.
See you next week talking about the first preseason week. So definitely excited for it. So
right on.
We'll see you guys next week.
Good night.